So come here. So you saw FinTech Austin, right? At FinTech Austin. Okay. I know that y'all probably aren't on Twitter as much as I am, which is almost constantly. But what we're going to talk about tonight is the importance of media, which includes social media, which includes video, which includes film. There's my camera. So to help get FinTech Austin going, let's take a group selfie. Y'all smile with me, and then I'll tweet it, and you guys tweet it. So come here. Yeah, it might. We'll turn it around, right? And to be clear, I'm doing this on purpose. Okay. That what I want to talk about tonight. Yeah, kind of get y'all. There you go. All right, I think somebody blinked in the background, but all right, I got one or two. You got it? Good. So why am I doing that? Because we're going to talk tonight about the significance, the importance of both media and technology with regard to venture capital. And what most people don't appreciate is that there is actually a very significant correlation between media and technology and venture capital. An old friend of mine who was substantial in the 80s, a man by the name of Peter Drucker, since you work in FinTech, you probably know him better than I do, is famous for pointing out that the only thing that creates value in business is marketing, media, right? Marketing, and innovation, technology. And I started my career at Yahoo. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. My entire life has been in media. And so what I want to share with you tonight are 5 thoughts. I don't have the remote, by the way. 5 thoughts about a different way to think about the role that you play as a startup professional or an entrepreneur. Do we have a remote? Thanks. A different way to think about how to talk to venture capitalists and how to talk to the press, right? When you're talking to venture capitalists, we always talk about the famous 10-pitch slide deck, right? You got a problem, a solution, and you're going to solve it. If you just had money to do that. Or we talk to the press by way of a press release. Hey, I've got an announcement. Would you please cover my announcement? The reality is neither of those things actually work that way. Investors, at least in the venture capital community, generally don't know about, care about, or understand your problem and your solution. Right? Your job as an entrepreneur is to try to figure out how to make it relevant, how to make it meaningful, how to make it matter to the investment community. So that problem-solution kind of narrative, that approach to talking to investors, is really a rather simplistic way of fundraising. It's a way to teach entrepreneurs. This is how you figure out what you're doing with your startup. This is how you develop the talking points that matter to most people that might fund you. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, I really don't care about your customer validation. I really don't know or believe whether or not your solution is going to work. What I want to know is whether or not you are the person, whether or not you have the team, whether or not you have the experience to actually accomplish what it is that we're talking about. Whether or not if I give you $1 million, you're actually going to be able to give me something back. Something back. The beauty and the opportunity that I had by living in California for a bit and working for Yahoo is that I learned to appreciate very, very quickly that the venture capital community also doesn't care about unicorns. Right? We like to talk about unicorns. Those are the solutions. If we just had a few more big outcomes in Austin, we might be able to get more venture capital. No, that's not it either. That's not the challenge either. The challenge is really quite simple, and it's that we need to learn to tell stories. So I'm going to tell you a story. I'm going to tell you a story about myself, because I'm very, very excited to be here. And I'm excited to be here because I don't work in FinTech. And so usually I'm talking to or I'm meeting with a lot of people that I generally know. And I'm thrilled that I don't know most of you. So I'm honored. Thank you for having me here tonight. I'm going to tell you a story about myself so you can get to know me a little bit. You can get to know why I talk the way I talk, why I'm in the news, why I'm in podcasts and in radio shows, talking about entrepreneurship in a somewhat different way than you typically hear. And it's because of my story. It's because of my experiences. A good example of that experience is that, like some of you, right? I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And so my first experience with film media was dominated by this kind of film, right? These kind of characters. And there's a reason I'm showing you this tonight. And that reason is actually that my kids tonight are at a sporting event called Star Wars. So I figured it was kind of a good luck charm that I got to talk about Star Wars tonight for the sake of my kids. But I want you to think about Star Wars as I'm talking about it, because the thesis, the idea that I want you to come away with, is that each generation experiences media film, music, print, news media, magazines, in very, very different ways. And the experience that we have with media as a child teaches us what we're going to do in life, how we approach the way that we develop our profession. The way it does that, of course, is based on our experiences growing up. So I actually grew up in Michigan. For those of you who's from Michigan, right, you'll get my thing. So I grew up here. I also grew up here and here. And I point that out because in the 70s and 80s, growing up in Michigan, we had a bit of an economic challenge, right? The auto industry was struggling. There was a big pharmaceutical industry there that was dying. My father worked for Kellogg for a while, and Kellogg was starting to outsource a lot of things. So we moved around a lot because the economy of that part of the world at that time was not terribly innovative. Didn't really understand the narrative, the story, the why of Michigan in order to drive media attention, economic development, jobs, venture capital. Something that Austin, as we all know, has been doing a pretty good job at for the last 5 or 10 years, right? Before that, something that Silicon Valley did an exceptional job at for a while. So I grew up in Michigan, and the reason I'm so passionate about media is, as you can kind of tell, I like to talk. I actually started my career in radio, and I say I started my career because I'm actually talking about high school. I was one of those media tech guys that would set up the film projectors, and that was my nerdy thing. And I ran the high school radio station, and I was a DJ on the air every single morning. And I became passionate about music and the ability to use this medium to reach and influence a lot of folks. But of course, back in the 80s, that didn't result in much of an opportunity in terms of a career, right? We knew this internet thing was happening. We knew the computer was coming along. So, given my circumstances until I was about 18, I plotted my path through life, my future. And it wasn't that I was pessimistic, but if you think about kids today, right, wrestling with whether or not they should go to college, whether or not they should afford to go to college, whether or not it's worth it, when there are no jobs anyway, right? We're automating all the jobs out of existence. My experience growing up in Michigan was rather similar. What the hell am I going to do? Right? And it didn't look too good to me. I hoped to live to about 140, but I thought it ain't going to be promising. So I left. Right? I fled Michigan. And I think that's an important point because it's a part of that story that I want you to think about with regard to yourselves. That I fled Michigan, there you go. I fled Michigan in much the same way that a lot of us are fleeing where we're coming from to come to here, right? To come to Austin, Texas. Around the time that Michael Dell started his company from his dorm, I started my first startup. You'll never find this website. I didn't do very well. So I went to Arizona State University, and because I was that kind of introverted media professional who was used to talking behind a microphone, I discovered the internet and I became fascinated. Here I am at Arizona State University, the biggest party school in the country for the 8 years that I was there. And I found myself skipping a lot of these parties to figure out what this website stuff was, to code on the internet. It's about 1995. And I took my past, my history, my experiences with music, my passion for music, and I built my own websites. And this was back when you had to do it, not yourself like a developer does today, but literally just HTML, right? Putting stuff together. Not terribly sexy, but it worked. And the reason I'm sharing that with you is that it worked so well that it gave me the opportunity to learn all of the different ways in which the internet was connecting people. And I tried everything, right? Anybody ever remember the banner exchanges? We did banner exchanges. We had affiliate marketing. I had affiliate marketing. I tried to build an e-commerce thing. I played with SEO before SEO was a thing. Was trying to figure out what this technology was doing. But to me, it was just a hobby. Right? It was just a way for me to explore this new form and this new medium. The reason it's an important part of my story, is that. Who knows this guy? Wonderful. One person? Really? So 1996, 95, I think it was 95, I get an email from Sir George Martin. Found your website on the internet, very impressed, like that you're talking about the Beatles, Sir George. Well, I didn't say Sir at the time. And I'm flabbergasted, right? It initially didn't even occur to me who it was. There was no Google, right? There was no Yahoo at that point to speak of. There was no way that anybody was finding these websites. But because I had built something because I was in the media, because I had developed something and put it out there, I get a note from the fifth Beatle all the way on the other side of the world saying, this is pretty cool. Shit. Truly blown away, right? And one of the things that we fail to appreciate is that back in the 80s and 90s, we were giving birth to the information age. And the fact of the matter of the information age is that absolutely everything that you do, all the pictures you take and share, all the information you put out there is available to everyone. So when you're thinking about how you talk to the media, the way you approach the media, the role that the media has in what you're doing, and when you think about how you validate what you're doing with venture capitalists, you have to keep in mind that we can all look you up. And the question is whether or not you can be found, whether or not you appreciate that simply by having a simple presence anywhere, you don't have to build a website, anywhere. Are you on LinkedIn? Are you on Facebook? Not that you should be, but are you on Facebook? Are you on Twitter? Do you have a website? Right? If you don't, you start off at a bit of a disadvantage. Why? Because that's the way the economy works today. If you're a thought leader trying to raise capital, if you're an entrepreneur trying to raise capital, and you pitch me, and I've never heard of you, what am I going to do? I'm going to go look you up. And if you don't exist, and there's no background, and there's no history, and there's no resume on the internet, and there's no profile there, you're at a disadvantage, right? The internet changed everything with regard to this simple idea that we can be found. We should be found. Why? Because your business can immediately be live on the other side of the world, so that George Martin can send you an email and say, hey, this is pretty neat. Okay? Because of that, I got recruited to Yahoo, back when Yahoo was cool. So back before Google, when it was actually a neat place to work. And actually, I was at Yahoo at a wonderful time. It was still a startup, relatively, a couple thousand people, back in their original campus. But I was there when the directory was still the de facto definition of the way the internet worked, right? AOL, think about the history of the internet. AOL enabled us to access the internet in a very easy way by way of a keyword. Yahoo's claim to fame was saying, no, we don't need a keyword. We're going to put it all in a directory. And they became famous for doing that. This index, this database of everything online, except it wasn't everything online, was it? Right? Yahoo built a business around the idea that we're going to help people find what's on the internet. They did a very good job of that. The reason I share Yahoo, though, is because what the heck was I doing going to work for an internet property when at the end of the day here I'm talking about film and radio and other forms of media. I moved to Yahoo right when Broadcast.com was acquired out of Dallas from a gentleman named Mark Cuban. Right? So I'm still drawn back into the media, and what I'm discovering at this point is that media is no longer traditional. Right? Media is no longer traditional film, traditional radio, traditional print. That there's something else happening here. That broadcast was a technology way before iTunes, way before Spotify, which we were trying to figure out before tonight started. Right? Streaming media in a way that nobody had really even conceived of at that point. And Yahoo saw that. They didn't necessarily leverage it very well, but they saw that, and they did something about it. And so I was there then. And the opportunity, there we go. Who knows this guy? So what was fun was I got found again. So the opportunity in being in an environment like that, an exposed environment, right? Being in an environment where everything we're doing is in the news constantly, because it was Yahoo then, like Uber today, except not as negative, was exposed. A gentleman by the name of Mike Murphy was working in Dallas for Yahoo, and Mike Murphy was the head of advertising for Yahoo for a little company here called Dell. And I was his inside guy. That was my job at Yahoo. My job was to develop the then largest advertising campaign in history for Dell. What a cool experience. What a cool environment. What an exciting opportunity for me. We were dealing with what was fun about Yahoo, and my point about being found, and my point about the role that the internet plays, what was fun about that time is that we had skunkworks in Yahoo that literally could profile you to a T without you telling us anything. Right? We're wrestling, particularly in fintech, right, with privacy and security and profiling people today. We were doing that 20 years ago, and you didn't even have to tell us anything. A appreciate what that means, right? We are actually tracking. We are seeing everything about everybody because of the internet. And it's not a question of what you don't do about it. It's not a question of how to prevent it. It's a question about what you do about it, how you take advantage of it. Well, Mike took advantage of it. Mike Murphy took advantage of it. And the reason I'm showing this guy is Mike took me to the Grammys to say thank you, because it was a $60 million ad campaign for Dell. Took me to the Grammys, and I had the pleasure of spending a few minutes with Paul McCartney. Paul McCartney, who shook my hand, and I'm sure he was just being gracious, but who then said, "Oh yeah, I've seen your website." And again, I was blown away. Look at the power of what the internet can do. Paul McCartney probably had never seen my website, but it didn't matter. Suddenly we were sharing a drink at the Grammys and shaking hands with each other because I could say something about the fact that George Martin had sent me an email. So my life, my perspective, my outlook on startups, on entrepreneurship, on technology, completely turned around, as you can imagine. Right? I went from Michigan and dying economies to Silicon Valley and having drinks with Paul McCartney. I went from this to thinking everything's wonderful. Right? Everything is wonderful. This is the way it's supposed to work. Right? This is the way it's supposed to work. This is how startups work. Big up and to the right curve, right? No, of course not. No, of course not. So 5 years into Yahoo, these guys came along. These guys came along and kind of gave Yahoo the subtle figure and said, no. Not only can people find things because of the internet, but the reality is they can find absolutely everything. Right? And if you've heard Google's mission statement, one of the reasons I wanted to start my conversation tonight by encouraging you to think about why we're doing what we're doing is because entrepreneurship and the pitch is not about a problem and a solution. It's about an opportunity that you create for venture capitalists. It's about an opportunity that you create for journalists. Right? It's a reason that they want to have a conversation with you. And the question that they're asking you is why? Google came along and said, because of what AOL did, because of what Yahoo did, because of what we can do with the internet today, we know that it's possible to index absolutely everything. Not just the internet, but every physical location, every video, every photo, absolutely everything. That's their mission statement. They never raised money on the premise of, we should have a search engine. Right? The Yahoo directory is just not good enough. We're going to build a search engine, we're going to do it better, and we're going to monetize it. Right? We're going to sell it to some customers. That's the way we're going to grow our business. They never ever conceived of growing a business that way. They went after a substantial opportunity by recognizing that that opportunity existed based on what had come before it. And though we didn't see the writing on the wall at that time, Google essentially effectively put Yahoo out of business. Right? Effectively put Yahoo out of business. They showed us the point that I've been making. I can just pass that one pretty quickly, right? That number two that I want you to think about is that everything is connected. Now, not only did I not make the move to Google, whoops, but my peers, my coworkers went on to prove that in many of the other dominant internet-based companies at the time. My director went on to become the CEO of LinkedIn. Whoops. My vice president went to become the the CEO of Groupon, and then launched Chicago Ventures. My coworker went to be the CFO of Yelp, and Mike Murphy, my buddy who took me to the Grammys, went to be the vice president of sales for Facebook. And I stayed at Yahoo for a couple more years. I stayed at Yahoo for a couple more years. But the reason I'm pointing that out is not that I made the mistake of sticking around. It's that each one of those is further validation of the point that I'm trying to get across. Right? LinkedIn is showing us that everybody's available online. We can give you every deal on the internet. We can show you every store, every business on the internet. We can connect you with absolutely everybody who's on the internet. Right? When we're working in this new information age, we have to think that way. I didn't think that way yet. I didn't realize it. I instead went to a little company called Hewlett-Packard. I went to Hewlett-Packard when they acquired Compaq out of Houston. So you can kind of see where I'm going, how I ended up here. Right? When they acquired Compaq out of Houston. Now, I didn't make a bad decision, right? I didn't even explain why I'm called SEO Brian. I don't do SEO. Why am I called SEO Brian? Because when I went to HP, it was at a time when Hewlett-Packard was just discovering this stuff. They were just waking up to the fact that, oh shit, everything's moving online. And I got pulled in from Yahoo, and I got handed about $400 million a year go figure out what to do online. So I ran all of HP's e-commerce business, search marketing business, affiliate business, email business back in 2005. Not that old. 2005. So I ended up at HP, somewhat unfortunately, depending on your perspective, but also at a wonderful time, right? Also at exactly the right time. Not because of the opportunity that was presented to me to spend this much money to become a bit of a thought leader, to learn how marketing online works, but because it was at that time that Apple had given Hewlett-Packard enough of a run for the money that HP changed their story. They changed their why. Right? It's called a PC for a reason. It's a personal computer. But at that point, the computer was no longer personal, right? Thanks to Dell, frankly. Right? It became this manufactured machine that was inexpensive. And so Apple had become the dominant brand. Dell had become the commoditized way to buy a simple computer. HP invested hundreds of millions of dollars in an ad campaign to reposition the brand of a personal computer as being personal. What happened? They drew me right back into media. Right? They pointed out that this device that's in everybody's home is the way that we're going to watch television, it's the way we're going to listen to music, it's the way we're going to share photos, that device, which eventually became that smartphone that we used, that device is the way that we stay connected, that we are found through every form of media that exists today. And as an entrepreneur, if you're not recognizing that, if you're not appreciating that, if you're not taking advantage of it, you're missing out on the most effective way of driving venture capital into what you're doing. I think that's dead. Yeah, that'll work, but I think that's dead. So, what I learned, this is the most sophisticated slide I've got. You can tell I don't like doing slides. Most sophisticated slide I've got. What I learned was that media really has to be thought of in a very, very different context. And the news media industry is still trying to figure this out. The video and film industry in media is still trying to figure this out. But things like video games, social media, and even radio, audio podcasting, they're starting to figure it out. They're starting to figure out that media today, if you want to participate in media in any way, if you want to blog, if you want your website to be found in Google, SEO is not the answer. Everything is connected. Media today works in this circle. Everything that you do online or off, that's kind of the key word, or off. You know we're tracking whether or not people look at billboards now. Everything that you do with regard to media is in this circle. And if your form of media, if your presence on the internet is not pervasive everywhere and always on, and enabling people to engage, just as we started this conversation, tweeting back and forth. And it's personalized. Why? Because I know you. I'm tracking everything about you. I can personalize my experience. And if we're not connected, and if we're not inclusive, and if we're not in the cloud, you are at a severe disadvantage. You may as well not even be doing what you're doing. Why? Only in the context of my point today, that if you want to raise funding, the venture capitalist is going to look at whether or not you even exist online, whether or not you even have any credibility or validation or experience of what we're doing. And if there's nothing there, I'll go on to the next one, right? We'll go to the next person. Because all we're looking for is people who understand the role that innovation plays, the role that technology plays in fostering the media's org now. So, because of my experience with HP, because I was spending so much money on search, that's where I became SEO Brian. SEO Brian, we'll pass this quickly. SEO Brian is really my skunk works. I'm not the founder of SEO Brian, it's really just me. I screw around with this website so much. If you go on there today, it's going to ask you to register so that I can ping you on demand. I just throw stuff up there to see what happens. Why? Because why not, right? The only way to keep up with the pace of innovation is to try things. So I've got a video on there. If you watch that video, it's tracking you. I have analytics, so I know exactly what you're looking at, how long you stick around, right? My point is that the old website that I built has evolved into this kind of website, which listens to and understands those concepts, right? And all I'm doing is learning and substantiating and validating that this is the new way in which people engage with brands and personalities. This is my brother and sister. I'm the one in the middle. This is my brother and sister. And I'm showing you my brother and sister for a reason. because they've gone in completely different directions than I have at this time, okay? But they've gone in important directions that help make my point. My brother is a hedge fund manager. He works in the investment banking industry. And in my entire career, and in my startup life, I've been thinking about curves that either go up or they go down, right? What does my brother teach me? My brother teaches me that, no, it doesn't work that way, right? We're constantly just kind of doing this. And hopefully it goes up and to the right. My sister is a nurse. My whole family, except for my brother and I, are actually in healthcare. So I'm the odd duck, right? I could be in fintech with my brother, or I could be in healthcare. My sister's a nurse, and what my sister pointed out was that if you think about it, the why, the passion, the story that I want you to find is really about your heart. And what is your heart doing? Your heart's always going like this, up and down too. Nothing in life is steady. Nothing in life is steady. And in the story that I want you to think about yourself, I want you to appreciate that the venture capitalist does not believe this. That is not going to happen. We know it's not. The number of times I see a pitch where your go-to-market strategy says, we're going to do this. No, you're not. I know you're not. You'll lose credibility. The reason I'm making that point so strongly is because we're also talking about media, right? The press. The press doesn't want to tell that story either. The press wants to hear about you. They want to hear about your experiences and where you've been. They want to hear about that Paul Graham chart, if you're familiar with it, the actual startup growth curve, as he coined it, which is this, which is actually a real reflection, not just of your business, but of you, right? And I went from a wonderful childhood in Michigan to crap, it's Michigan, to some rock bumps in the road to finally figuring out how to make things work. Same things happen in startups, right? You start something, you're excited, you're thrilled, everybody wants to talk about it, and then you start burning out. You're not getting enough support, you're not getting capital, and so what happens? You kind of plateau. You're going to be faced with competitors, you're going to be faced with people who quit on you, right? What we don't believe when you're raising capital and the story we want to hear in the press, in the media, whether you're talking to a journalist or you're just being yourself on Twitter or Facebook or on SEO Brian writing about yourself, the things that we want to hear are the stories, the experiences that you have, right? Number 3 is ups and downs. Those are my kids. I'm bringing up my kids because we're finally getting to why I'm in Austin. Those are my kids, and I'm showing you my kids because this guy is 8. Oh my gosh, he's almost 9. So I've been in Austin for about 8 years. And when my kids came along, as some of you know, everything changes. When my first daughter was born, I quit Hewlett-Packard. Just like that. And my wife thought I was crazy. Right? Why would you quit a good job, solid income, to go be a startup guy? And I just thought because I didn't want to teach my daughter to work 9 to 5 for a big corp. Right? I'm going to go do something. I don't know what, but I'm going to do something. My son was born right at the time of the mortgage crisis in California, right after we bought our first home in Los Gatos, California. If anybody knows how expensive Los Gatos is. Right at the same time that, just to get to know you really well and hug it out, right at the same time that I had cancer. All of a sudden, the ups and the downs, right? 3 kids in my life, beautiful, wonderful kids. My team, all very different personalities and people. And I'm hit with the realities of life, that there's also a down in what we're experiencing. So I looked at my wife and I said, we're moving to Dallas, right? Where else would we move? I know some of you are from Dallas, right? Or you used to be, right? We're moving to Dallas. Why? Mark Cuban from Shark Tank is there, and Broadcast got acquired. And I know 600 people who worked at Yahoo up in Dallas. God knows what they're doing now. Right? Since Google put them out of business. And Trey Bowles, who runs the Dallas Entrepreneur Center, is one of the founders of one of the first streaming media companies. Here I am discovering that I'm passionate about media. Of course I'm going to Dallas. And we arrived in Dallas. My wife and I spent 2 weeks there. Certain that we have to move there, because where else are we going to go? Keep in mind, this is before Austin really blew up this time around. And we get on the plane to go home, and my wife says, it's like LA with any of the good stuff. Oh, shit. And I said, well, I go to South by every year in Austin, and it's a music town. Let's go check it out. Let's just go see. Last ditch effort. We came here for a weekend, We had to go somewhere. Right? We came here for a weekend. We ended up in the hill country, Lake Travis, where all the Californians live. Right? So we ended up in that neighborhood, and we just fell in love with this place. Right? We fell in love with this place. Why? Because there's something palpable about what's going on here. Something palpable about what's going on here. There's a reason so many of us are coming out of Northern California. Right? There's a reason so many of us are choosing, frankly, Dallas or Austin or Chicago or New York. Right? There's a reason people are coming to places. And the magic about the story that I want you to tell, and the story that the media wants to tell, and the story that the venture capitalists, frankly, need us to tell. What is the role of a venture capital firm? It's to raise money so that you have money. Right? If a venture capitalist can't do that, because we're not exposing and telling and exploring these wonderful narratives about why Austin and what's going on here, they're having a hard time raising money too. Right? That money's going to go to where it's known to deliver returns. So Austin's starting to figure out that, no. Look at what's happening here. We have something amazing going on in fintech. Look at what Paul's looking at in media technology. Right? We've got something going on because of South by and film and music and video games. There's something going on there that's not quite the same as elsewhere. How do you add why you're here, the industry in which you work, where you've been, what you've been doing to your narrative? Because it's an important part of the story that investors and the media want to hear. So back to that thought, right? That's where we ended up. And we ended up because, think about it, this is kind of cheesy, there's a new hope. We could take on the empire. Here in Austin, right? Here in Austin, though, truly, we're reinventing the ecosystem. We're reinventing the entire global economy. Why? Because we're all coming here from a different part of the world saying, that's not what we wanted. That's not what we're looking for. That's not the way in which we'd like to work in the future. We're coming here with an amazing collection of experiences. And I think I've got like 2 slides, so thank you for doing me the honor of some time. We're coming here from these coasts, these predominant elements of the industry, our U.S. industry, are moving to this part of the world. Why Austin? It's not because all of Northern California is moving here. LA is moving here. New York is moving here. Chicago is moving here. Absolutely everybody's coming to this part of the world. Why am I doing media tech ventures? We did a study about 5 years ago with the state that showed that a great percentage of the people moving out of LA, Silicon Valley, and New York are coming out of the media industries. Advertising, film, music, online media, social media, advertising. They're coming to this part of the world. And rather than doing media the way we used to, having to get something produced by the film industry, having to have an agency produce your album, right? We here can figure out how to make it work in the new economy. We can embrace the idea that we can be streaming media, and there's no reason to have to sign with a label. Because we understand these stories. Because we're starting to understand these stories. I'm going to walk over here for just a second. The reason I wanted to make the point that you have to start with why. You have to start with why you do what you do is because it ultimately depends on the team that you have. Each experience the generations have had with that film, with Star Wars, is different. Because if you think about it, there are different teams that took on the Empire. And it was only that first movie in which this kid with passion, the CEO, the founder of the startup, went and found a hacker with resources who could bring the things that he needed to take on the Empire, to go save and take on the Empire with the support of an understanding of the market. Right? The market, which frankly is what Leia was. Right? She knew what was going on, and she knew how to talk to people and manipulate people. That team was the ideal team of founders for a startup. The person with the passion, the CTO, and the CMO. Right? This movie taught us that you have to have the right team. And the fact that Austin is at the heart of media innovation, I believe, is an opportunity for us to understand how to better tell these stories to create the future of our economy. That's the last slide. So, start with why, right? Why did I start by explaining to you why I'm here? Because you don't care what I'm doing in Media Tech Ventures. I'm not here to pitch you. We're here to tell you a story, right? That might be interesting. We're here to talk about how to speak to the media, how to tell your story a little bit differently so that they'll listen. We're here to figure out if we can talk to the venture capital community a little bit differently than what you're used to so that they'll fund you. I wanted you to just listen to why there might be a different approach. And the different approach, I think, is that simple. Appreciate that we're in the information age, that you have to be found somehow, that absolutely everything you're doing is connected, that nobody's going to believe if you're up into the right curve. I don't care how many customers you have that have validated what you're doing. It doesn't actually matter. Because next year when a competitor comes along online and really gives you a run for your money, suddenly you're going to dip. I know that's going to happen. That's okay. If you don't know that, if you don't explain that to me, I'm not going to invest in you. I need you to prove to me that you understand the market. I need you to prove to me that you understand the market in which you work, where you are. Right? And I need you to prove to me that you can pull together the people that can make that happen. I work in venture capital. I work with media technology and innovation. I'm the easiest guy on the internet to find, and that's why I didn't put up my email address and all that kind of crap. Look me up there if you want to talk. That's, I think, all I've got. So thank you guys very, very much.